Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Zurich. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet today. Here in North Sydney, the Camaragal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I'd also like to extend our respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples who are joining us from our Brisbane and Melbourne offices. Again, welcome and thank you for joining us and taking the time out this afternoon to participate in Zurich's Financial Literacy Masterclass. At Zurich, we do believe that wellbeing is more than just health and mental holistic activities, and that it's also about financial security. Today is about some fun, but it's also about sparking ideas and a conversation. We really want to know how we can support members and employees in their financial well-being. I'm excited to share that we have commenced a partnership with Evolution Media, and we're looking to create a program that helps people rethink a relationship with money, in particular their relationship with money, and make more informed decisions that will impact not only their lives, but the lives of their loved ones. We're really honoured to have Vanessa Stoykov with us here today, who is an award-winning educator, author, and CEO of the Evolution Media Group. Vanessa's career actually began here with Zurich, not in this building, over at Blue Street. So it's pleasing to have an alumni with us today. But before that, she co-founded FEEL, which is the Fund Executives Association for the not-for-profit superannuation sector. And over 25 years, she's actually been creating content and delivering keynote speeches that inspire people to take control of their financial future. Her work spans multiple formats across storytelling, podcasts, books, and television. And they're all designed to make financial concepts engaging and relatable. Today, Vanessa is going to share her insights in how that can transform the way people think about money. Following Vanessa's presentation, she'll join me here on the stage where we'll have a short Q&A. So if I can please ask everyone to save their questions, but also build up some good ones so we can have a great conversation. Before we kick off, we'd like to just play a short video before Vanessa joins us on stage. Thank you.
The world is rapidly being shaped by artificial intelligence. Life is busier, faster, and under more pressure than ever. Whether in business or in life, what people value most is trust and connection. Storytelling is how we build both. Research proves it improves recall, creates understanding, and sparks empathy. Stories cut through the noise and turn information into relationships. And for salespeople, leaders, and influencers, trust and connection mean conversion. Stories help people see themselves in the journey, believe in the outcome, and choose to act. For more than 25 years, Evolution Media Group has told stories about money, life, leadership, and what truly matters. Led by CEO Vanessa Stoykov, who has interviewed some of the world's greatest storytellers and been trusted with the stories of notable people worldwide, we now bring this craft to you. Through keynotes, workshops, webinars, and courses, Evolution Media Group helps you master storytelling to build trust, create connection, and inspire action. In a world being reshaped by AI, trust and connection will always matter most. At Evolution Media Group, we show you how to build them through the power of storytelling. Evolution Media Group, storytelling that connects.
Thanks. I just said to Marsha, who works with me, I'm so proud of Evolution, my first baby. I started this company 27 years ago with 14 grand, with which I spent 10 on a launch party, which tells you the kind of person I am, straight up. And that 10 grand, I had smoke machines, I had lasers, and my first job had been with Greg Bright. I don't know if how many you remember, industry publisher Greg Bright. My first job out of journalism school was Investor Weekly magazine. And I applied for Truckin' Weekly, I applied for Equestrian Weekly, could have gone either way, but I got into institutional finance reporting, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the brains of the people in finance. And I was like, these people are so smart, but there's a gap here. And the gap is, how do you turn this into everyday speak? Because the difference between the technical language in our industry and the average person on the street, it's this wide. So I really started Evolution at 26 to have a great party, but also in the spirit, it started as a PR firm, which I sold, and then marketing, and then advertising, and then content, and then television, always trying to solve the same problem though. How do you engage people? How do you get them interested? Because the reality is most people are not financially literate. Like 56% of Australia has low financial capability. The new Deloitte research came out this week, which is very good actually. They did with Iris. Have a look at it. It's free. You can download it. I can send the link to Zurich actually, John, because it's really good stuff. But it shows the low financial capability, and it's not that people are stupid. They're busy. They're pulled in 50 directions. They don't have access to information that they understand easily, and they're not curious enough to try. And so how do we make them curious enough to try? And I know when you're sitting here in a financial services role, you're trying to engage people because you're providing a service. So that's really what I've been spending my time doing. I think the bottom line is it's okay to talk about money. It's taboo, it's rude. My dad was Serbian, and I come from a town called Gunnedah, rural New South Wales, and he worked in the mines. But my dad was someone who'll go, "Oh, hey, mate, what you earn?" And I'm like people don't really say what they earn, but like Dad would just ask that, because in Serbia, they talk about money so much, like it's crazy. I took Dad there and I was like, I don't even know what they're saying, but I know there's money involved. But so I learned very early on that it was okay to talk about money. And I think that's been a real skill, losing a taboo of asking. And I've asked all sorts of people how much they have, what do they earn, what does that feel like to be rich? All sorts of questions. And I think people are quite struck by it, but they'll usually answer because there's no further intent in what I'm asking. I'm not wanting anything. I'm trying to understand them, I guess. So 27 years of that have taught me a few things. But when it comes to using storytelling to engage people, to drag them in, it works. Like that's why I've tried so many mediums of media press, and the media is changing so much, and AI is changing us so much. But for people like me who are really content creators, AI is a dream, because my output can just go up now, and it can learn my style, and like there's so much you can do to generate more. But you can make a lot of content. How do you make it hit? How do you connect? These are some of the ways we do that. And I love showing that picture, maybe because I like colourful things. You may have guessed that by the flamingo suit I'm wearing. But it's to show that people don't really learn the same way. Like I've got a lot of friends who love podcasts. Hands up here who likes podcasts. Yeah, they're usually the intellectuals. It kills me. I don't listen to them. I love Netflix, damn it. But like, everyone learns in a different way. And so you can't make one thing and go, okay, well, you got that now. So how do you make things where you go, okay, you might be interested in that. I'm not going to get you that. Like one of the things where it says storytelling and entertainment, we did animated fables. And they're you remember Aesop's fables? I used to love them when I was a kid. What are they? 1 minute animations that sort of have a moral to the story. And sometimes you can show them at a high school or something, and the kids will think about it, and you'll see them just start talking differently about it, because it's not a lesson. It was a piece of art and a mini story. So they're just some of the ways we do it. But more to the point, we're living in a world where this crisis, it doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. I mean, there's better financial minds in this room than me, but we're living in a planet of diminishing resources. So things aren't going to get easier again. And when you think about that as an educator or looking at connecting with people, you've got to think of people in this frame of mind. Not only that, climate change. And if one more person talks about the insane weather, Melbourne, I hear it's snowing, it's real and it's here. But there's always, knowing the planet is also going through what is a crisis in our temperatures, that makes people anxious as well. So you've got that overlay. And then there's this. I'm not saying the word because I fear it's recorded and somehow I won't get into the States, but there is this, and this is the environment we're all living in Australia and in the world. So when we talk about financial well-being, what we're talking about is people feeling secure, that they can cover their bills, that they know sort of their plan. And there's some people we will never make feel like that because their situations are dire. And then it's about what can they do to take steps to improve that. So there are very much different stages of where people are at mentally, but this research that I mentioned from Deloitte that just came out this week actually showed that we've had a decline in financial literacy since 2016. So that's pretty sad. There's no real financial literacy strategy from the government anymore. I mean, we remember the Money Show with Paul Clitheroe. My mum still talks about what he says, and I'm like, I have been in finance like 30 years, Mum, but sure, because she likes him. And she bought Scott Pape's book the day mine went on sale as well. And I was like, what? But that's my mum. With this problem as an overlay, and knowing that most people don't have what Deloitte are calling financial capability, which is very different than financial education. Financial education is basic, credit card, savings account, whatever. But capability is I can invest, I can make decisions around owning property and all those things that are more complex. There is low financial capability in this country. We know the effects of low financial capability and financial stress. Mental illness is, money is a huge reason we're driving a mental illness crisis in this country. And how do you relieve it? And how do you help people? And I think about this so much in the content I'm making, help make better decisions when they're working. When you go into fight or flight and there's cortisol flooding your body, you're going into caveman mode. All that prefrontal smart development stuff is gone. You're in the back of your brain. You're on the run. You're trying to escape a danger. You do not make good financial decisions in that scenario. You just can't. It's impossible. So, a lot of the content I'm now making is around how do you manage that financial stress. Like, I call this the abyss, and I show this one a lot to people when you're in the abyss. And look, I don't care how much money you make. Like, I've been in the abyss. I've had a business for 27 years. The abyss is my second nature. It's like this when you run a media company. But how do you teach people skills to stop looking into the abyss and start looking towards a plan? And that a lot of those are psychology tricks and, getting people to implement different ways of a growth mindset. So, it's not just about let's teach about compound interest. There's so much more to it to activate people to take action, because really they're the only ones that can. Overlay the sort of world situation we're in with this at the moment. The intergenerational wealth transfer, we'll talk more about that, and I'll share some interesting stats from something random that you might enjoy. But also the Deloitte research said there that 57% have never done any retirement planning, and they're over 55 already. So if you're a super fund, or if you're a corporate in any way responsible or participating in the financial lives of your customers, clients, staff, members, this is going to be a very pressing concern in the next 10 years. Which, also presents an opportunity. This was interesting research done by Core Data for the FSC in New Zealand, which I love, this oldest daughter phenomenon. And I just heard someone bitching about that just then, going, I do it all, my brother does nothing, whatever. And I'm like, this is the story of our lives, right? That there's going to be someone responsible for estate management. And it's not always. I have 3 sons, so I don't know, the eldest one's just going to get it. See, it's always the eldest. So that's going to happen. But how do we deal with this with the next fact in mind? So mostly women doing it can be complex. You're breaking up estates, there's wills to deal with, there's tax issues, there's all sorts of things, hopefully dealing with a financial planner, talking to your siblings. It's actually a big job. And as you can understand, a very emotional one. How often do families just go, oh, that's all agreed? Like, it doesn't really work like that. So, and another trend, just to keep the hits coming, also the phenomenon of grey divorce and people having superannuation savings and a house and then going, okay, now we're halving all that and starting again. It's a huge topic. So really interesting to think about how you cater for these trends that are happening at a societal level. I wrote a column for the Daily Mail. I don't know how many Daily Mail readers we have here, but I promise you, once you look at it, you won't stop, because they're global, they're very big. They're the biggest news service in the world, but they are called popular for a reason. You can click on a story and it's the world's most sexually active woman says, and you're like, oh my God, but these headlines click, right? They know how to make people click. So I've learned a lot in a year and a half of being a columnist. I write a money column on a Sunday and I answer reader letters who write into me. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a journalist by training. So every column I do, pretty much every one, I'm recommending talk to a financial advisor, because every situation. But what really people are asking me to do, and you can see some of the headlines, oh, dad had a secret daughter, now she's taking a share of everything. So yeah, my husband's taken the house, should I agree? Divorce issues, a lot of them. I think my most popular one that went off in the States, because the UK and the US now syndicate this, was I just paid $30,000 for my daughter's wedding and a year later she's getting divorced. I'm bitter. And it's like, obviously there's a lot of people who've spent money on weddings, because I think we had 250,000 hits on that in an hour. So people are like, yes. Now, what's interesting about the Daily Mail is they reached nearly half the country over 40, which I had no idea of. I hadn't read it. It wasn't on my list. They're only digital, and they're owned in the UK, but people are on this site for a long time. So, and they publish 6,000 photos a day. So what I've been able to do out of doing this column every week is get the data at the back end of what Australians read and then what everyone around the globe reads, because they're everywhere. I'm getting people from Nairobi writing to me, and Iceland, and crazy stuff. But these are I put it all in AI, or the columns, and then it'll come out what are the global issues and what are the Australia specific ones. So that's been really valuable. But these are the issues in Australia that people are talking about the most. One thing, when you write a column, people can comment, and sometimes you get 1,000 comments, but you get 100 comments off the back of someone else's comment. So it's like they're there talking to each other, which I find, I mean, the comments are the best bit. There's some trashy, crazy stuff, which you'll get a laugh out of or be disgusted by. But there is also some really good ones, because other people are sharing their stories, which is interesting. So, you know, if your content or your people, or you're thinking about, you know, what are they going to be thinking about in their lives? These are the big issues handing over. And in Australia, it's mainly around property. So we have a much bigger focus on property than anywhere else in the world. That's something the data showed me, which was really interesting, but I guess makes perfect sense. But the whole sharing of assets between blended families is a really big one too, because we're going to have this huge wealth transfer, but there are a lot of people who do have blended families. And then, I mean, housing affordability, the whole, how do you set your kids up with a home? Should we give our kids a deposit? How can my bank and mum and dad help? That is a very, very hot topic with people too. Obviously, aging parents, if you're a Generation X, keep in mind my column is called Flourishing After 50. So when people are talking about these issues, I mean, there's people in their 40s reading it, I'm sure, but it is for people around perhaps my age. And then making these trends, these issues that people are talking about popular, how to do that. So, you know, divorce, they do really good headlines. There was one the other day, Pack Goes Whack, and it was Jamie Packer talking to Joe Aston. I don't know if you saw it, but I thought, I don't know who's writing these headlines. They're so kitsch. I think I showed you the other day. But so I had a psychologist in to do the video version of the column, talking about how you deal with the shame if you have, this woman had gotten divorced and couldn't get out of bed because she'd lost her assets. Her girlfriends are going out to lunch. She can't afford to do anything anymore, and her life's just spiraling. So rather than trying to answer that with a financial solution, answer it with the solution of how do you change your mindset when you're in that situation, when, you know, your wealth has been diminished, shame is attached to that. And that was really popular globally. So really popular. And then doing a story on a man who got divorced and having a male perspective has also been very valuable, because I think women tend to get a lot more stories around divorce and everything. But the guy on the right was around, this guy had split money for his house and gone out and wanted to buy another house so his kids would visit him. But reality is his kids were teenagers. They weren't going to come for very long, and he was going to be stuck with a big mortgage again. So what did he do with that? But that was an interesting issue for people to break down and talk about, because they're real life issues that people are going through. This keynote is probably the one I give the most. I've been out anyway. I don't know if people have seen my LinkedIn. I got obsessed with posting from the mines, because I went out for Glencore Mining and did a gig talking to all their crews of miners about money. And this was the talk I gave. Now, my dad worked in the mines in Gunnedah. He was a machinist, a fitter and turner. So I know miners, right? They're my people. And I had a good time, although it was a long way to Collinsville and it's as hot as hell. But what I do there is speak, and then they get my book, and my book went to #1 on Amazon in the last couple of months. So that was exciting in the financial section. And they can have an audio book if they don't, and then we give tools. So, but the first thing I talk to people about is themselves when it comes to money. So, when you're sitting there thinking about how your behavior is with money, because we've all got money regrets. I could name about 10 things, and I'm like, if only I hadn't sold that house, if only I'd done this, and you think, I wish I hadn't. We've all got them, but they're lessons, even though they're bitter ones. But what did you learn from your parents in childhood? And I spend quite a bit of time on this, because, the things like money doesn't grow on trees, and there's all these sayings and things we grew up with that are beliefs, right? And they're core beliefs, and they're deeply embedded in us in a way that we don't even realize. So a lot of the time we're operating in an environment that has an unintentional bias. So, talking to people about that, and then we'll do workshops and getting them to talk about it. I love it when people start learning what they learned from their parents. It's either they want to be like their parents or they want to be nothing like their parents. Usually it is a big extreme. This is my dad that I talked about in the mines. Now, I learned a lot of great things from my father, who was the best person in my life. He died 7 years ago. And the strongest person I know. He came here from Serbia with nothing and was set on the work for a visa scheme, and made sure that his kids got university educated, and like everything for him was about getting a chance for the next generation. So I got a very good work ethic from him. But in learning about that work ethic, I thought you had to push it uphill. Like I was working from 13 at a chemist, and like I know there's people in the room who are like, yes, usually immigrant children are taught like, you got to work. It's work to live, work to live. And it wasn't until I got into finance and then realized there was all these people making heaps of money. And I was like, hang on, like maybe you can work smarter, not harder. And that started to change my mind, because I started to learn about investing, and I started to learn about things that I hadn't been aware of. So I talked to people about my own understanding of what I learned, and there was nothing wrong with it, because it's great and it served me well in life to have a good work ethic. Thank God for it. But it wasn't the thing that was going to grow wealth for me. And I had to unlearn that. And I talk a lot about unlearning money before I could learn how to make money. And that usually gets a lot of people's conversation going, because what I'm really trying to do is give them a mindset shift. You can't get people to do something different unless something changes in them. If they're the same person and you haven't reached them, they'll walk out of the room and do nothing. So I always try and look for people to go, have I reached you? Have I got something there that you've got a curiosity about that you can follow up for yourself? And sometimes that's download your super funds app on your phone. They don't have it. That's the first thing. And then they've got their app on the phone and they go, oh, that's cool. And look, there's money there. Woohoo. And then it starts something, So a lot of the time when I'm out doing these keynotes are important, because they're activating people to listen and to be aware. It's hard. Like, when you make television, when you do pods, they're almost things you do when people want to go deeper. But at the start, how are you getting them in? Like, where's the show? And I think that's the challenge for us in corporate, in super. Where's the show? What do you got for me? Because I've got 7 streaming platforms. I'm as tired as hell. Why do I want to listen to you? We did a big piece of research last year with a lot of the members of Chief Executive Women, of which I'm a member, and they were really generous in showing to me where they saw financial wellbeing in their curve for their staff. Lots of heads of HR or CEOs, everything from Melbourne Water to Coles to Bunnings to all sorts of businesses. And I can, again, send the research if anyone wants to see it. But most of them still said they rely on their super fund for the financial education of their people. That was their #1 source of financial education. So, but a lot of them made the comment, if anyone's under 45, they're usually not that interested. So, okay, that's interesting in itself too. How do you get their engagement from younger people about super? Well, usually it'd be about broadening the conversation, right? To not just be about super, so that they can see that there's a pathway and super's part of that for them. So that was an interesting outcome from that. I talk a lot about money and your partner because it's now the number one reason for divorce. It used to be infidelity, that's swapped around. I think people are like, literally, if the money's there, we're good. And if it's not, it goes badly. So fighting about money is a huge path to divorce. How do we stop that? How do we get people aware? And this is the slide I like to say, this is about the assassin. Have you seen something on a credit card bill or found a receipt, your other half spent money and you did not agree to that? And you're like, hang on a minute. And I've done it myself. You wait home, like, what's this tent? Like, what the hell? $2,000 tent. And then as soon as they get home, you're like, what's this? And what happens when you're on the front foot with someone? Usually, well, I was married to a Scotsman, so he was coming on the front foot back, right? It was not like, what is that? It was like, and it's on. And so teaching people to be like, okay, let's not be the assassin in this relationship, but be strategic. Yes, that is an annoying thing, but wait till they're home, sit down, and make a time. Let's talk about our finances and bring it up there. So then it can be yeah, I'm sorry about that, or explanation rather than an attack. And it's funny when I talk about that to people, you can kind of see some people like, and I did a bunch of interviews out with the miners, and one guy said at the end, I got to go home and talk to my missus. And I was like, I feel great about that. Thank you. That's good. We've had an outcome. And it's really about, and I think this was one of the reasons the Barefoot Investor was so successful. One of the suggestions was go on a date night, involve alcohol, and talk about money with each other on a regular basis. So every 3 months, every 6 months. And that got people enjoying it because you're doing something enjoyable. You're not fighting about money or what's got to be paid. You're being strategic about it. And, if people start doing that and putting that as a habit in their relationship, then you can put your financial strategy more at the front of your plans rather than, I'm one of the 57% of people who haven't even talked about retirement planning because we're just so busy. This one, I have a lot of conversations and we can deep dive on this because of this intergenerational wealth transfer. There's so much content here, but talking to people about if you thought you fought with your siblings as kids, wait until you're dividing your parents' assets or you're deciding about putting them into aged care, or someone's got dementia and you've got to deal with it. Like, so many families are not having the conversation. And I know I'm guilty of it myself. Like, none of us want to talk about it. We know my elder sister's going to be the one. I'm like, who gets the tin out of the cupboard and tells us everything about it. But no one in my family even wants to talk about legacy, which I say. So, we're now creating these tools that are about being able to sit down with your family with a one-pager and just hand it out and go, let's talk about our family legacy. What do we stand for? Where did we come from? What's your dad's story? What did he believe when he came to this country? Whatever it is, getting people to talk about legacy is a much better way of talking about what is asset division. Because when you talk about legacy, that you can then go, oh yeah, well, we always wanted everyone to have a house. It was bricks and mortar, okay, well, we've got a house now and none of us have a house. How could we make it that we'd have enough for a deposit out of this? Like, that could be the legacy, that could be the gift. And then everyone go, oh, we feel really good about that. Like, we've got a family plan. You probably need someone like me to help spin it because, selling this up isn't easy in families. So, whether we make a video or something for people to be able to get in the spirit of planning their legacy, which is the start of estate planning, and then eventually getting a will, which, more than half of Australia doesn't have a will. So that's kind of a priority too. But all these conversations can encourage people to do that. And obviously now with dementia being the biggest killer, I think, of women, but I think it's almost overall now for people, like, you can't make good financial plans when you have dementia. That is just the reality of life. And then it's up to other people. So really having that awareness with people to get it done while you still can, and having those awkward conversations with people. No one wants to go, hey, you've got dementia, let's get this done. But, there's got to be a point where, and baby boomers find it very hard to talk about money. Like, it's just so taboo and so rude and so so how to do it in a way that's really respectful and, again, legacy focused. But what would you want? Because everyone goes, I want to die in my house. Like, how many people hear that? I'm like, yeah, we all want that, but does it happen? Like, you can't stay there if you have dementia, you're a danger. So yeah, there's all those hard conversations to have, and there's much better outcomes to be had if they're had early. So just encouraging people to have them and providing those toolkits so they go, yep, now I can talk about this. and trying to remove the taboos. Like, I love the idea of celebrating family legacy, bringing everyone together. And you have to bring people on the journey. There's always a knob in every family, you know it, but you're like, oh God, them. But you have to bring them, because otherwise there'll be trouble. So someone has to be the person who can pull everyone together to make this happen and smooth over the people who are going to make it hard, because there is in every family that person, or maybe more. Financial advisors, I feel like I've spent most of my life talking about see a financial advisor, and I'm not one. But I've been working in that area for so long because I've seen the power of it myself. Like, they know things I don't know, and they understand tax things that I don't know. And I wouldn't know. I'm not particularly interested in doing, that's not how my mind works. I like the story of what motivates people to do it. I don't want to do the spreadsheet. So I've found it very valuable to have good financial advice from a very young age in my business, and have very good accountants to work with me. But how do you help people get to financial advice when there's only 16,500 in the country? There's going to be 700,000 people retiring in the next 10 years, I think I just read. So that came out of the FAAA. How do we encourage people to talk to their super fund about that, and you become a big part of that solution? I know a lot of people are talking to me about how do we encourage people. They seem to get to this $500,000 balance and then go, oh, now we'll move it somewhere else because we got enough money to have an advisor. How do you counter that? Or how do you work with people so they understand their options earlier than that before someone else makes a decision for them? So talking about how to deal with a financial advisor is really important. And we do lots of videos on that, of just talking to financial advisors, but making them interesting. Like, there can be some boring stuff, let me tell you, but I usually talk about scenarios with them. What if I was 48 and divorced and wanted to not pay premiums anymore? What would you do? And get them to scenario things for me. And then you see their thinking, and it's so much more structured than I would ever think. And I'm like, So I've actually got a series of Zurich videos from Zurich advisors, because I wanted to learn more about the objections when people look at insurance, because I'm building a new risk keynote. And it was really interesting because I just gave them a whole bunch of personas and then talked to them about the things they were bringing up to me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I hadn't thought about that at all. And I changed my mind on what insurance I needed 3 times. So that was frightening, but I was glad I did it. So this is what we do, and we can also film corporate, like your own advisors. So it's very easy. We do it on Teams. It's not expensive or time consuming, but just giving people access to those deeper dive conversations if they're in that situation. It's not free financial advice. There's a whole bunch of, disclaimers around it. Teaching people to be their own advocate. I think this is something that's such an easy win, and I get a lot of good response for this when I'm out there. So giving people very simple, you're in debt, you're paying off a mortgage, you're a couple who's there. So what would be, and I mean, you're dreaming if you only owe 700 grand in Sydney now. I don't know about everywhere else, but mortgages seem to be crazy. But let's look at an average one at 700, and they say they're paying 6.25, so you're getting 4,200. But if they found a cheaper variable rate, which some of the alternative providers would have, that would be the monthly repayment. So $326 a month, you're like, yeah, okay, that's probably worth doing. But over the life of the loan, it's a heap of money. And when people start to understand, I can talk to a broker and move my mortgage. I don't have to go into the bank manager and resign and feel like, I haven't been loyal anymore. There's no loyalty to banks anymore. Like, there is this, brokers have gotten a lot of power off the banks now. It's an interesting dynamic, which I'm only learning more about as I go deeper into that world. But brokers can do all the admin for people now. They can go to a system that picks up, they do most things. You have to provide very basic data and information, and they can do that for you. And when people realize they can save that kind of money by doing nothing except for some slight admin, like, why wouldn't they do it? Another one is debt, like credit card debt in particular. And this is really good for young people too, who have 5 grand on a credit card because you've been traveling or whatever. Because a lot of the time they'll be like, we don't have any more money to pay this off. So coming and telling me to save and whatever, like, I've got what I got, I barely eat and do anything. I don't have any extra. So showing, okay, you bought something for 5 grand at 22%, you're going to pay over 3 grand in interest. So really what you're paying for is $8,000, not 5 for a start. But if you pay same thing off, but fortnightly, you've only got $100 a month, but you're paying $50 a fortnight instead of, you're saving 2,229 in interest. Oh no, that's how much you've paid. So 11 months and 900 in interest. and you haven't paid $1 extra. All you've done is pay it off fortnightly as opposed to monthly. I mean, that's a revolution for people. Are you actuaries and are going to tell me the numbers are wrong? Oh, thank God. No. It's really scary being in a room of really smart people. I'm like, shit, don't be adding this up. But again, these aren't rocket science things. But when people suddenly realize, shit, I can just go into my bank account and time this thing fortnightly now and it's automatic, it's a quick win. And that's great for financial well-being. So there's lots of other things I do. And, you know, I'm nearly on time, so we're running out of it. But we do a lot on after 50s, obviously. This whole flourishing after 50 thing has really taken off because there's so many of us in our 50s and 60s now, and we've got assets and we're getting divorced. I got divorced, so I'm using that as a great example of the destruction of half your assets, but rising again. And, you know, people like to hear that you make mistakes. And I say, I've made all the mistakes. Like literally, I am the best test case for what not to do. But it keeps things interesting. And I think this one that I'm developing now, I'm really happy to be working for Zurich. They're very nice people, as you may already know, because you work with them. Zurich have a really different culture, I find. And I did work here at 22. I was a BDM. I started as a journo. Greg Bright couldn't afford to keep me. And so the guy who ran the investments at Zurich said, whatever you're on, I'll double it. And I was on 26 grand. And I was like, whew, I'm on $30,000. And he's like, done. And I was like, woo. And so Zurich to me was me hitting finance. You know, I was making it. And I loved my time here. Then they did cost cutting and I got retrenched, of which I got $14,000, and I went out and bought $4,000 worth of Carla Zampatti clothes because I was obsessed with this designer and loved her stuff. And Katie, who works here, just said to me, V, I love looking at all your stuff because you've got these amazing suits. And I'm like, Carla Zampatti has dressed me for like nearly 20 years now. And it all started with that. So it's a very good connection to that. But so talking about threads when you love fashion, you know, we've come up with a story that the 6 threads that rule your life. And, you know, like the threads of fate that we used to talk about, if you cut your fate line, you die in Greek mythology or whatever. Insurance really has this whole threads that I didn't understand until I started doing the interviews and going deeper around, you know, the thread of assumption. Yeah, I've got enough insurance in my super fund. Cut that thread. You don't. What happens? So looking at how you know, resilience, someone dies, how do you keep going? Looking at how you strengthen every one of the threads of your life is a really nice narrative to talk about how people can look at risk in their life. And I've really been working hard to find an interesting way in, right? Because you've got to get people again to how are they going to care about insurance? Well, if we talk about the threads of their life and how they strengthen them, and then they go, okay, I can be strategic about that. I understand that. What thread do I need to strengthen? So that's coming soon. And the last thing I've been doing, which I've had a blast at, is I've started teaching the industry how to do storytelling. So speaking at events, I just became a lecturer for Financial Advice New Zealand and developed a course for them. So I've been training financial advisors on how to tell their narrative, how to connect with people quickly, how do they get it out their mediums. So, and that I think is the future, because we have to be great communicators to connect with people. And it's everyone's job to think about communications, because it's the thing that will make the connection that will get people to do what they need to do. So it's been a lot of fun. But the big thing is that if we can get people to talk about money and think about money, and I guess get some excitement around if they can see a vision for their life, you know, we've done a great job. Like, we've changed people's lives. And, you know, I feel like sometimes if I was out converting people like a missionary, like when you see people get excited about something and you see that light come on, like that's the best thing. Like, I love that. And if we can aim for that, you know, and the content's always aiming for that, the narratives are, then we are going to change lives. So thank you, Zurich, for having me, all of you. Such a pleasure to deal with. And thanks for coming and sitting, listening. You've listened for a long time and you've been really well behaved. No one's looked at their phone. This is because there's no under 20s in the room, or if they are, sorry. Thank you very much. John, I'll hand back to you for Q&A.
Yes. Thank you very much, Vanessa. Please don't run away. You're going to come and join me up here.
Okay, so should I stay here? Yeah.
Please, yes.
This yours or mine? Did you lick this?
That's my one.
Okay.
Yes,
all right, this one's mine.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. a lot of information there to unpack, and I think the key thing that I took from it is, this touches everybody. It touches everyone, families. I love, again, the stories. Yes, my father immigrated from Greece very young, didn't have anything. I think he had a Bolavuzo that got confiscated down at Woolloomooloo when he arrived. When he arrived here in Sydney on the ship back in the 60s. But yeah, it was good just to reflect on those things. And again, I think that's where the emotive side of this can sort of come out and work on how we can do this better. And what I'll do is we've got our teams in Brisbane and Melbourne, and we'll throw to them. And for everyone in Sydney, please have an opportunity to think about things that we can talk about with Vanessa, because really this was about just having a conversation, sparking some ideas and getting the narrative going, because we realise that financial literacy is a key thing, and we know that there are a lot of opportunities to do better. Before we get started, I thought I might throw one to you. Probably wouldn't be a presentation or session without discussion around AI. And obviously there's a lot happening in that space. So I was keen just to ask you, from your travels with advisors and being a journalist, how you see AI impacting particularly advice, but also maybe financial literacy.
Well, I do think it's a revolution, and I'm excited by it. Like, I refuse to be one of the people who goes, oh, I'm so scared of AI, because it's here, it's not going anywhere, but it amplifies everything so much. You have to check it. That's the thing, whether you're getting it to write an article, do a report, but it takes so much time out of the guts of what you're doing. It's such an opportunity for us. And I now tell people in my seminars, first financial plan you do it with chat. Tell it what you want. You want to live on 10 grand a month and you want to retire in 20 years. What's that going to take? And ask chat first, and then ask chat more questions and more and more. And at least you're getting them curious, and they're getting numbers. Like, it's life-changing stuff. So I'm all for it. If the robot thing happens and people be like, screw you, V, you were wrong. I hope not.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, to me, it just feels so. People love playing with tools, and there's a lot out there, but I feel like it gets to a point where they're like, let me just check in with someone to make sure this is the right thing we should be doing. So I agree. I think the combination of is still going to be important. What we might do now, I might throw to Ross Hickman in Brisbane. Ross, are you coming in loud and clear? That's yes.
Hear him.
Can you hear us, Ross?
Oh, look at that. He's
I just wanted to build the tension with a pause. No, can you hear us?
Yes, very good.
Hi, Vanessa. Yeah, we've got our group insurance partners in attendance today. So I'm interested in how organisations can ensure that financial literacy education leads to sustainable behavioural change rather than, short-term enthusiasm.
Yeah, it's a good question. And the only solution to it is it has to be ongoing. You can't have one speech or one seminar and expect people to have it all. Like, you actually have to have a program where they can build on their skill level, and you have to be able to measure their engagement for it. So, we can do things over 12 months where we serve people content and we start to understand, like I showed you with the Daily Mail, what are the themes? What are they clicking on? What are they not clicking on? And then give them more, give it to them in a different way. So really, it's just having that ongoing conversation.
Thank you. I might pause and see if any of our esteemed colleagues in the room want to ask a question.
I've got one.
Yeah, go for it, Penny.
Hi, Vanessa. Penny Pare here from Australian Retirement Trust. You talked about the number of advisors in Australia and the population. So a lot of super funds are working on different digital advice tools and models. And I really loved what you were talking about teaching people or talking to people about how to engage a financial advisor and have those conversations. How do you see those two things coming together, the rise of digital advice and still being able to support people with that kind of training or education?
I think it's a good one, and I think it's very age group dependent. Like, I've got my sons are 22, 20, and 16. The 22-year-old, like, he will never talk face to face to an advisor. He would be happy to do digital advice forever. Whereas I still want to talk to someone at my age. I don't care if I've gone through a process. Like, I still want the human confirmation at the end of it because it's my money, right? And I think that's going to be the tension which super funds have to be the fulfillers of how do you still give them a human face, even if it's on Teams, but it's a real person talking about you. Yeah, and how do you keep serving them content that takes them on a journey to get them to be ready for that, and then what they do after that. So it's that continual conversation rather than just dropping into the party and dropping out. Like, we have to be committed to ongoing strategy for how do we raise that level of capability over time. And it takes ages. It's so boring. Like, it's so boring to wait. You're like, come on, like, but it's like, in a diet, you can go, I'm now size 10 and I just starved myself for 6 months. Like, money takes forever to get a result. So how do you keep making it interesting in the meantime, so people at least have a growth mindset enough to feel like, yeah, I'm making progress. I'm feeling positive about this. Because if they're feeling positive, they'll take more actions.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? Sorry, I do have one more. Always too much to say for myself. What metrics or indicators do you use to measure whether financial literacy programs truly empower individuals over time?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at ultimate outcomes for people. You can look at actions taken. You look at engagement time with content. You can look at click-through rates. I mean, there's so many different metrics depending on what piece of content you're giving them that you would be measuring. But I think sometimes we get lost in measurement too much when you're trying to get a result in people. And I say this because I've started to work for a not-for-profit called Community First Development. They're Indigenous people around self-determination, and they've got the coolest measurement for success of how they do a project. Community has to invite them in, and they've got the idea, and they'll help facilitate it so community can get an outcome. But the way they measure it is so beautiful, and it's called Dream Timeline. And it's almost like, yes, we want to measure if people are engaged or we're taking them somewhere, but we always want to measure, do they know what their dream is and are they heading towards it? Like, have we inspired them enough? And it's hard to measure inspiration except for the fact that they keep showing up and they're engaged and they don't leave your business. So yeah, there's metrics galore, and I've got my digital marketing person here and she could give you a million, but inspiration and continuing the journey has to be the biggest part of that.
Fantastic, thank you. Back to you, John.
Thank you very much, Ross. Lucy, we might throw to you down in Melbourne.
Sure, thanks, John. I'll kick off with one, and hopefully some others might have some to follow. But Vanessa, from your experience, is it pretty universal across populations in terms of where those gaps are in financial literacy, or do you feel like in order to really get cut through, you're having to be quite specific per sort of employer group or fund cohort? So when you go to talk to the miners, are you changing up the way that you get to, you sort of reach that population versus speaking to someone in a financial services context?
Yeah, it's a good question. And there's always a level of customization. So I think there has to be. So even down to what I will wear to the mines versus what I would wear to corporate. But the way you communicate, the way you speak to people, the way, I mean, a lot of them were on their phones, like looking at the app once they saw the app and had an interest in that. But I saw I was better off to give them other sources of information that they might find interesting to follow on their phone, because they were just going to short form when they were on a break or whatever. So you do have to be fluid in looking at what are the needs of this workforce and how can we do something that is customized, but you can't rework the wheel. So that 5 conversations keynote, anyone in the world who has any family or any money can listen to that and get something from it because it's relevant to everyone. But then you customize per industry to be more relevant, so they feel like they connect with you and go, oh yeah, you get me, I'm going to do that. And I enjoy that challenge. I think that's probably the hardest part, in just getting into different groups and going, what's the mindset here and how can we shift it, you know? And that's a job for people. It's a job to do it. And we've all got that job to help people's mindset shift to get towards financial freedom, or at least a financial plan.
Thank you. Anyone in Melbourne have a question?
So Andrew Bowl here, Vanessa. Wealth creation is a positive aspect that people can have a go on a journey towards and measure how they're progressing. Wealth protection, and I get continually frustrated even by politicians who have said several times that you don't get value from insurance unless you claim. You know, so all those other people that had insurance that didn't claim, well, they got that was poor value for them. Have you tackled that problem?
You almost want to go, duh. Like, don't you? Yeah,
Tell me
like,
why
woo, it's paid off. It's hard. That's what, you know, and it's a good question, because how do you make insurance sexy? It's not easy. Hence this 6 threads, and I've been thinking about this narrative to get people to understand that if their life threads are strong, then they're going to have a better life. So it isn't about, I've just wasted money because I didn't need it. Thank God you didn't need it. But how do I strengthen all the parts of my life so I have the best chance for my family and me to have the life I want? And once people understand that, I think they have a better narrative. Even my editor, who was editing the advisor video, she's like 25, and she was like, oh, that was really interesting. I learned a lot then. And I'm like, cool. When I know the creative staff get into it and think something, then they've learned, like, we're doing something good. So yeah, it is hard. You have to be creative, and sometimes, yeah, there's so much messaging from politics at the moment that I find so disappointing. I'm like, come on, if you were better communicators, things would be a lot different. But anyway, we are where we are.
Just to, sorry, Michael's name, from Zurich. Just to add to that, it's funny that question was raised, because when I used to work in health insurance, a lot of the common feedbacks that we used to get from the customers was, look, I'm better off putting that money in the bank, earn interest on it. If I need to make a claim, it sits there. I can need to go to the hospital, it's there, I can use it. So they wanted to be the insurer themselves. That was a common thing that used to come out. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, well, one of the conversations we learned that people do the same with an investment property. Oh, I've got a property, if something happens, I'll just sell it. But it's like, but wasn't that your wealth creation plan? So what you're now saying is it isn't wealth creation, it's insurance, whereas you could have insurance and still have wealth creation. And it's like, oh, okay, I hadn't thought of it like that, the trade-off thing. But pointing those things out, it's almost like you need talkback radio. You know, some people think they know everything. We all know those people. So how do you get them to still think it's their idea? By talking out these things so they go, oh yeah, okay, that's, yep.
Anyone else here in Sydney on the floor? If you raise your hand, yes.
Hi, Mark Duncan from Aon. Just start by saying not all Scotsmen are assassins.
I am divorced, I hate to say.
2 points. Great content, so thanks for that. First of all, the innovation. So obviously it's a challenge. My 27 years in the UK, trying to get people engaged with finances, even through the corporate, was always a difficult, very difficult kind of job. There was a lot of innovation in the UK, certainly in the last 2 to 3 years before I left to come to Australia. There was a lot of regulatory pressure to put on corporates to get that message out. So people don't understand what the pension's worth. They don't understand how much life insurance they've got. So innovation was key to getting those messages across. To the point where one of my biggest clients made it part of the annual appraisal system. So for your balanced scorecard, you had to come along to get 5% of your pay increase, knowing how much benefit you had through the employer. So has there been the same amount of pressure from the Australian market for employers to do similar?
We do like a good mandatory thing, like voting, Australians. We like to follow the rules. But I don't think there's been the foot on the head, you have to get this to get that. I think it's been more sold as make sure you're getting your super and are you getting paid, those sort of campaigns, because there's a lot of people who work for hospitality and whatever who just, you know, we're getting lost in the cracks. But I think there's more we could do for people to value their super. I think a lot of the time people think, oh, it's so far away that I'm not going to, who cares? But guess what? Time passes. Suddenly you do care. So how do you activate people to care more? And even just the apps. And the super funds have got some good tools at their resources, you know, at their fingertips now, but it's still that spark. And there is no boot saying you have to do it. The government has been very soft on financial literacy, even in schooling. Like if you look at what your kids learn, you learn Pythagoras theorem, but you don't learn about compound interest to buy an investment property or to buy an ETF. So, yeah, I think we're a bit behind on that.
Because interestingly enough, in the UK, certainly on the pension side, it was the younger, let's say 20 to 25-year-olds knew more about their pension than 35s and onwards. I think that's because their parents got to that point where we wished we had been told this earlier. So that getting passed down through the families, which you mentioned earlier on as well, is really important.
Yeah, there's a huge like parental knowledge now. Like my kids, when they turned 18, we gave them $3,000 and an app. Each one got direct shares, one got an ETF, and the little one's not 18 yet. So, but you know, and then you think that suits their personality. One wants to pick stocks, one just doesn't, just wants the money to come out of their account. But understanding your kid's money personality and then being able to teach them core skills is important, which is great if you've got them. Really hard if you don't have them yourself to pass them on, and that's a huge issue, which is where corporates and super funds can come in handy. And I found a lot of the time super funds have felt hamstrung because they can only talk about super, really. But how do you broaden people's interest with topics so that they can learn more and they're more engaged in a broader conversation? Good questions. And you do have a nice accent.
You're not an assassin. That's okay.
Yeah.
Vanessa, just on that point, I mean, one of the things in our business we often look at, both in super but also employee benefits, is how to message to what is in effect 5 generations working side by side, from baby boomers right down to whatever the bottom one is. I know it's 0 or something. But you know, how do you, like, from your experience, how challenging is that to communicate and try and engage with such a varied cohort of, whether they're members in a fund or employees within a specific employer, or even an industry sector? So can you share sort of what good looks like in that space?
And look, it's so different because those generations like to be spoken to so differently. So you really do have to look at what's broad enough that everyone would be interested, and then break it down to these cohorts would want this. And if it is online, if it is getting a celebrity or an influencer to talk and doing a live broadcast because they're that 0 generation, I mean, then you have to be in the conversation where they are. There's no point talking to them if they're not there. So how do you get in that conversation? And that's very challenging. I mean, very challenging. So, but that's why media houses are all struggling, because it's hard to make money out of media because there's so many conversations happening online now, and there's so much free content, that how do you monetize content, or how do you make money from a commercial perspective on education? Like, I mean, educating your people, you get a Ernst Young proved that you spend $1 on financial wellbeing, you get 3 back. Like, because people are more engaged at work, they're actually like not doing 12 hours of personal admin on company time, they're not having sick days. So you can kind of see the reason why corporates would go, this makes sense for me to spend money on this on an ongoing, because I'm going to make money off it. And that's reality too. You got to sell it that way.
You beat me.
Nathan?
Vanessa, Nathan Destapanian, Trinity Wellbeing Group. Love the suit. I know someone can do better, just saying.
Oh, thanks. Boom.
My question is related to, I've almost forgotten it, related to the psychology. When thinking about the different ages on the back of the questions and conversation that John and my colleague here from Aon have raised, where does that sort of timeline for penny drop or light bulb moment kick in across those generations? Be it if you're an insurer, if you're a superannuation fund, what's the kind of investment of time you would suggest any one organisation should commit to when thinking?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I've developed a process for that called financial flashpoints. So financial flashpoints are those moments in your times where, I've finished uni. Am I going to get a car? Am I going to rent? I've got money for a deposit. Am I going to buy a house? I'm getting married. Oh, I got divorced. Like, there's all these moments that are either A or that are financial flashpoints. And so the easiest way, I guess, to connect with people in times of need is to create a dashboard of what are your flashpoints, which is what we do, that big myriad of things that I showed you. What are the flashpoints in people's lives? How can we make content around that to activate them? Because that's when you got the shot, right? When they need to make the decision. Hopefully you're getting in before, so it's mulling in their mind and they're thinking about it, which is heaps better than quick, make a decision now. But those financial flashpoints are really important. They're the activation points for everything. And because there's so many people heading towards retirement, heading towards intergenerational wealth transfer, there's just a whole bunch of financial flashpoints coming up that we got to be ready for. And now.
Just in your travels, have you observed what people trust the most in terms of the source of financial information? Is it through the workplace? You know, do they trust their employer? The employer brings those sorts of things to bear, or is it the super fund, the bank? You know, have you made any observations of generally what people trust when it comes to?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I've really found that in the last year. I mean, I've gone into places like Denton's Lawyers versus a Glencore, so very different workplaces, but people do value information given to them by their workplace. So I found it, you're more likely to get people in Financial Flashpoint if they've come to a company update or whatever we're doing, like they're interested. So I find that's very powerful, and there's a trust. I mean, people trust their super fund. They just aren't as engaged as they could be with their super funds. So I think it's how to get more relevance and have conversations so that people go, okay, as I head towards these decisions, they're with me, like they get what I'm going through. And a lot of the time we're hamstrung in finance by the language we can use because there's so much compliance. So for someone like me, I sit with a publisher's exemption as a media person. And I mean, I'm not out there giving stock tips or anything. Obviously, no financial advice am I giving from a product-specific nature, but I'm more likely to be believed as a media identity because I'm independent and I'm not flogging any one product. So there's a power, and there's a whole bunch of influencers you would have read about on TikTok and everywhere else who have their own cohorts of people that tend to trust them. My flatmate at uni was Will Anderson, the comedian, and I went and took my eldest son to see his show, and Seb, my son, was like, oh, Mum, like, A, you're laughing out loud a lot, like embarrassed, but B, he said, everyone here is your age and older, and you've all got the same sense of humor. And I was like, oh, that's a bit flat. Will's like, what'd you son think? I'm like, loved it. But like, you know, you get an age group where you like the same cultural things and you grew up the same way. So you all tend to like the same stuff, but you got to think every other generation also has that. So how can you tap into that? And a lot of the time, my job as a content creator is to find other good talent in other generations who can reach people. It's not me. I'm only going to reach a level of person who, you know, usually around my age or 40s, you know. So yeah, it's interesting to see how people still want to be in their groups. People still want to be in their own conversations. How do you enter them in a respectful, interesting way that intrigues them enough to do something?
Yeah, look, I would agree. I think in my travels, what I've sensed is there's an element of you can have all of the content, all of the technical input and contribution, but at the end of the day, people want to know, what are people like me doing? Am I part of the group? Are they doing similar things? So yeah, I would agree with those comments. I mean, one of the things that we're very conscious of is, I mean, I use the term in some ways as an insurer, we're very good at building product, pricing product, you know, fundamentally, you know, paying claims. That's what we're good at. But it seems like it's obvious the opportunity to collaborate, working with super funds, working with brokers, and other stakeholders to bring the content together and get the message right. And I think certainly from a super fund perspective, we're really keen to try and reach out and how do we bring more of that comms expertise around risk protection. So that certainly for me seems to be an opportunity, but won't be the silver bullet, but I think it's certainly something that by putting all our heads together, I'm sure we can get some better outcomes than what we've seen thus far.
Thanks, John. I think so too. I think it's a very good partnership for us because you've got a specific narrative, I think, and Zurich's a very trusted brand. So already coming into a relationship where we'll provide things to a trusted brand who wants to add value to their clients, it's a win-win-win. So we'll scope things and do things differently depending on who the cohort is and what you're doing. So if you want to talk to us, please, your people are out there to talk to in each state anyway, but happy to sit and look at what do you need? Like, what's happening with your fund cohort member staff and how do we activate them? And it's fun. Like when you see results, it's very rewarding. Like you do feel like, hey, I've just made a huge difference in someone's life. Let's celebrate with some booze. Woo! I don't know if everyone else is getting bubbles in other states, but I know we're getting champagne on the roof. So not that I'm standing between everyone and a drink, but you know.
No, thank you, Vanessa. Don't wind yourself up. We are happy to take any final questions or comments before Vanessa takes us to a break.
So I'm back again.
Nathan, welcome.
I love the soup, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for coming in late with that, but yeah, no worries.
And apologies if this question is a bit too right in the middle of your eyes, but I'd love to know, from your experience and your recent ventures in financial services, the importance of advice. I think we all in this room understand it is integral in the individual's journey around retirement and safety and financial freedom. Conversion rates from your programs, from those that attend your seminars, is there a linkage that you can draw upon from data available to you post-session to seeking out the right help and executing on the advice?
I mean, I know you're asking about a particular school's case study, aren't you? Like, we had a lot of principals come out of a conference I spoke at, 600 primary school principals, but we straight up had 78 requests to help me find a financial advisor. And they're people who are highly educated, just so busy, like crazy busy. And a lot of the time that's helping facilitate relationships for them. So that's a measure of conversion. Sometimes it's getting them to sign up to a newsletter or downloading their app or whatever it is. You sort of walk in going, what do I want to make happen with this engagement? Like any meeting that you'd walk into, and I tell my young people that work for me, what do you want out of this meeting? So every time I walk in a room, I'm like, what do we want people to do? Whether that's I need a financial advisor, whether that's I need to go and subscribe to this newsletter, or I need to ask my super fund about that, whatever it is, how do you activate that? And it's different for every room, which makes it all the more complex, but interesting to solve. And now we get the drinking.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Well, look, on that note, I would firstly like to thank you so much, Vanessa. It was great to have you join us today, share your insights. Unlike prior experiences, we'll make this a good marriage between Zurich and everyone.
Thank you. The pity vote.
And we are genuinely excited. Like I said in my opening, this is something different, something new. We want to have a bit of fun with it, and really, everybody's input here today, plus others that couldn't join us, we want to bring on the journey. So we want to have a red hot crack at this. Like I said, we'll put our heads together, come up with some creative things, try some things, and let's see what results come out of it. So thank you so much. Great to have you and your team here. There is a QR code, is that right, Lindsay, for some feedback. We would love to hear from you, how you found today, any ideas from today that we can work on with you. And finally, we are breaking for some canapes and drinks across the various locations. So Melbourne and Brisbane, enjoy. And for those here in North Sydney, we'll head upstairs shortly. So thank you so much for coming and look forward to seeing you again soon.